The 20th Australian Grand Prix at Port Wakefield, South Australia in 1955 was the first one not held on public roads but on a purpose-built car racing track. It was built by Brooklyn Speedway Limited because the South Australian government had banned racing on public roads. The mere 1.3 mile or 2 kilometre layout was the shortest Australian Grand Prix venue ever, half the length of previous venues. Totally flat and very tight, it packed 6 corners into its layout. Pit lane was just a crude dirt strip and there were no facilities. With the main straight only 500 metres long, the big engine cars were forced to use lower gear ratios for more torque and better acceleration. This car has wrongly been called the Largo Talbot, only in Australia. But you wouldn't call a Brabham Climax a Climax Brabham. One look at the car's engine tells you its proper name. It's the Talbot Largo. The revolutionary Cooper Bristol T40 was Jack Brabham's first Formula One car. Having ingratiated himself with the Coopers at the start of 1955, Brabham decided a mid-engine 2-litre Bristol-powered central seat Cooper would be just the car for his Grand Prix debut at Aintree in July. So with John's support, he helped himself to the stock of components and built himself a 15mm longer wheelbase GP Cooper, which was only 2 litres. After a few inglorious races in the UK, Brabham then decided to put her on a boat to offer her a career in Australia. The T40 was raced at Orange, Ardmore and Port Wakefield, where it scored its first victory. Jack then decided to sell it to Red Smith to pay for his family's return to Europe. The Bristol T40 stayed in Australia for many years, changing owners several times, and eventually went to the UK in 1989.
Jack decided that he'd already raced a Cooper Bristol with a front engine. It's called the Red X Special, front engine Cooper Bristol. And he decided to put the Bristol engine in the back of one of the, virtually one of our sports cars really. And his first race was at Aintree at the Grand Prix, where he finished, I think it was about 6th, but he took it over to Australia and won the Australian Grand Prix with it.
Because of my association with Coopers in Australia, if you like, I was driving the car. When I came to England in 1955, naturally I went to have a look and see where those cars were built, and met John Cooper, and we've had a wonderful association ever since.
In spite of its lack of pretension, the Cooper T40 was in fact the forerunner of the technical revolution which was developed at the end of the 50s, an era of lighter cars and engines located behind the driver. This was still the age of the heavy front-engine Grand Prix car. It would be some time before the Brabham-Cooper combination really made a name for themselves.
Here's Reg Hunt's team about to embark on the 823-kilometre journey from Elstonwick, Melbourne, to the South Australian circuit. On the left is Reg's brother, Jeffrey, and on the right is Dickie Boardman. On their way, Hunt's team stopped at the Bridgeport Hotel, Murray Bridge, South Australia. Reg's Maserati was the race favourite and attracted a lot of attention. Three 20-lap qualifying heats were held on the Saturday of this October-long weekend. The first 7 cars from each event going into Monday's final, with Sunday being a day off. first 7 place getters from each of 3 heats would go into Monday's final. However, as only 7 starters came to the grid for the first qualifier, it was only a matter of finishing. Lex Davidson was a non-starter in the HWM as he was ill in bed with viral pneumonia. Tom Hawkes and Kevin Neal, Cooper Bristol's, made a race of it for the first 3 laps, but then Neal eased up to save his car for the big race, and from then on the qualifier was just a procession. Nine cars fronted for the second qualifier, with M. Trenberth Vincent 1000 taking the lead, followed by W. Craig in the Alta Holden and Bill Patterson in the Cooper. The order of these first 3 did not alter for the whole 20 laps. Further back, Bruce Walton in the Walton 500 spun, entering pit straight, but kept his motor running and restarted. And Jay Cummings in the Bugatti Holden on one occasion went down the escape road at the end of the main straight. Heat 3 promised more interest as the 4 fastest cars had been saved for this event, and again there were 9 starters. Stan Jones in the Maybach was out in front for the first lap, followed by Reg Hunt, Jack Brabham and Doug Whiteford in the Largo Talbot. Then Hunt took over the lead for the rest of the way. At lap 10, the cars had spread right out, and Whitefoot, tired from lack of sleep after a very eventful trip from Melbourne, was content to cruise around. Hunt kept motoring reasonably fast to lap all the field except Jones and Brabham. anecdotes and experiences of the people who raced these tracks. Easy to read, very large font. The most comprehensive and lavishly colour illustrated work on this subject ever. A Mr. Sickerdick brought Don Brady's Singer Special and ran it in 1971. Then the Houtez-Roeder family in the Riverland had it until 2010, by which time one of them had taken it to Canberra and dismantled it. James Redwood finally tracked down this car built by his uncle and grandfather. It was in a box trailer, but he had it restored and it's been with the family ever since. The car remains in South Australia and competes in historic hill climbs at the Collinggrove track, here with 14-year-old Elliot Redwood behind the wheel, the fourth generation to drive this car.
My name's Elliot Redwood and I'm driving a 1954 Singer Special. It's been in my family for its whole life. Originally built by my great-grandfather in the 1950s from a crashed Singer 9. It was then raced in the 1955 Port Wakefield Grand Prix. It's been going great. I'm double entered with my dad here. It's about my third or fourth time driving out at Collinggrove and I've got a PB once again today, so it's been a great day. By the end of the weekend it'd be great to crack a 45 and beat my dad's time. So at the moment I have 1 second to beat him. It's just such a great track, you know. Collinggrove, it keeps bringing me back out here, you know. It's nice, it's always nice conditions and good track, and it's great for this car that I'm driving today.
Eldred Norman was an extremely innovative and creative race car designer and builder, and in 1955 he drew a unique concept out in chalk on the floor of his workshop for this Zephyr Special. The Zephyr engine, leaned over at 45 degrees for a low centre of gravity, acted as a stressed member for the front suspension, with modified FJ Holden front suspension bolted to the front of the engine. There isn't a chassis, just an 8-inch torque tube bolted directly to the engine, extending back to the clutch and gearbox with a 3-speed ZF transaxle from a Tempo Matador truck. When the car appeared at Port Wakefield for the first time, the scrutineers were worried that it would break in half. So Eldred pushed it under a truck and put a jack under the Zephyr's central tube and lifted the back of the truck off the ground. Its deafening sound is caused by 6 exhaust stubs pumping out methanol fumes, along with the roar of the Wade supercharger running at twice the engine speed. Its performance matched the leading Cooper Climaxes of the era. In 1956, it was sold to Keith Rillstone for £1,250 and he fitted Holden drum brakes with Vanguard internals. Ken Messenger found the remains of the car in 1973, progressively restored it and raced it for years. Peter DeMack then brought the Zephyr Special in 1978 and rebuilt it again. Graham Snape finally bought it in 1982 and the car has been with the family in New South Wales ever since, competing in historic hill climbs at the Collinggrove track and in sprint events and circuits that are not restricted by noise limits. Two home-built 1955 Australian Grand Prix race cars, 69 years and still going strong. This was the first time a rear-engine car had won the Australian Grand Prix. It was seen as an out-of-the-ordinary upset win, but the next one would not be until 1960. In October 1955, an impressionable 12-year-old South Australian boy travelled 4 hours with his sister and family in a Vanguard to Port Wakefield to attend his first car race meeting. That boy was Vern Schuppan, who would go on to become one of Australia's top international racing drivers and win Le Mans. Vern says, "There was just something about the car that stuck with me all these years, and so he recently bought the car that fascinated him above all others as a child." Running Doug Whiteford's Talbot Largo car now in historic races, he says, "It is really cool and I have to pinch myself when I think about personally owning this car." This was Brabham's first Grand Prix win and motivated him to return to the UK and attack the World Drivers' Championship. In 2005, he returned to lay this plaque at the track. The Port Wakefield circuit was a failure. The right idea in the wrong, inhospitable place. It only operated for 8 years. When it came to be South Australia's turn to again host the Australian Grand Prix in 1961, the Port Wakefield circuit was declared inadequate and the Mallala race circuit, twice as long, was created instead.